But whatever I'm going to talk, you'll be able to understand very well if you do one or two exercises which I want you to do. Can you just stand up? Just raise your hand. Stretch it in front. Sit to the side. Bring it down. Jump. Okay, you can sit down. Now you will understand what I'm going to talk. We are manufacturers of mobility equipment and accessibility equipment. This is not directly related to Ayurveda, but it is related to the human anatomy. For those with restricted movement, with restricted mobility, people who cannot move even a few inches. We're talking about people affected by muscular dystrophy or multiple sclerosis, or people with spinal or head injuries who cannot move at all. This is, it is not related to allopathy or Ayurveda, or it doesn't, it could affect any person. So we deal with equipment which can make these people more mobile. They can move from one place to another. Mobility means providing basic movement. People who cannot even take a step. People, if they're sitting like this, they can't even move a few inches to the left or right. They have to be sitting in that same wheelchair, or they have to be bedridden for weeks or months. So for these people, we provide basic movement. That is mobility. Accessibility is another term which is used. Accessibility is to make the place around that wheelchair user conducive. And the wheelchair, the person must be able to move around. The wheelchair kudtache, but if the place has got a lot of obstacles, if it has sofas, if it has got chairs, if it has got steps, you have a beautiful ramp here. A ramp is one of the basic accessibility equipment. This is a permanent ramp. We have permanent as well as detachable ramp, so that a person using a wheelchair can become more mobile. They can move up and down. So we also have some equipment which will enable a person recover faster after an illness or after a surgery. We have some equipment which will help them recover faster. So I'm going to talk about the basic, the mobility equipment. That is equipment that will make a person move from one place to another. That is basically a range of wheelchairs, different types of wheelchairs. A wheelchair, we know only about the wheelchair that is there in our hospital. Something which can be, on which we can push a patient around, take a patient from one place to another. But the wheelchairs can do many more things. Besides just giving the person the power to move, the person can lie down on a bed, on a wheelchair. The person can travel up and down on a wheelchair for whatever purpose it might be, but there are many things that the person would want to do with a wheelchair, functions and features. On the left top, you see a wheelchair where the person can recline. Just by pressing a button, there is a motor which will make the person recline. And then we have, on the right top, we have a person who can come to a standing position. Most of us don't want to keep sitting. Everybody wants to stand. And so do the people with disability or with restricted mobility. They also want to stand up. It's a dream. Here we are so uncomfortable sitting for a long time. We want to get up. Whereas these people, it's a dream for them to stand up. And the left bottom is for people who are heavy, or for people who do not have help at home. It could be an aged parent who cannot lift the person and put them on the bed or on the sofa. So they prefer to be at the ground level itself. These are called ground mobility devices, which are meant for people who spend most of their time at the ground level itself, especially those who crawl. Those who crawl prefer to be at the ground level, because if they fall down, it could cause more injury. So they prefer to be at the ground level itself, but they also require mobility. If they crawl a lot, they could injure their knee, and they get a very thickened skin on their wrist. So to avoid all that, that you see on the left bottom would be very, very helpful for these people. And on the right bottom is also a ground mobility device, but if the person wants to come to a chair height or a bed height, all they have to do is sit on the platform and press the up button, and the platform will raise them from the ground level up to whatever height they want. It could be to the bed height, or could be to a sofa height or a chair height, whatever. So these are all basic mobility equipment with different functions. And we can always have a combination, you can have a permutation combination of the features, and you can always come up with a new model. Permutation combination, as I said, different functions. You can pull out one function from one particular wheelchair, another function from another wheelchair, and you can combine the two to have a third different model. So that's possible. And also the customization. There are fat customers, there are thin customers, tall customers, there are dwarfs, all types of customers. We call them customers. It will be patients for you. So a very obese person might require a larger wheelchair. A very thin patient might require a very small, or a child, for example. A pediatric wheelchair would be better for a child. So customization as far as measurements are concerned are very much possible on wheelchairs. And all these functions need not be necessarily put on a wheelchair. It can be put on any chair. If you want this chair, something like this chair, to have those functions like reclining or the seat going up and down, it can be done on any chair, need not necessarily be on a wheelchair. So equipment, so we just saw what can provide mobility, and this is for people who need access, that is the place to be made accessible for a person to use the wheelchair. So there are several, the ramp is something that many of us would know. Ramp is for going up a flight of steps, or it can be a small platform, or it can be a curb. It can be anything. But the rule of the thumb is, for a ramp, the ratio of the length of the ramp should be minimum 6 times the height up to which the person wants to move. For example, if the platform is 1 foot, the length of the ramp should be minimum 6 feet. Never forget. If it is going to be 1 foot height and the ramp is going to be 3 feet or 4 feet, it's going to be very steep. So minimum length of the ramp for a wheelchair to go up should be 6 times the height up to which the patient wants to move. And then you have on the left, right, if there is no place for putting a ramp occupies space, and there is no space to put the ramp, then we have a motorized wheelchair lift, or you can say it's a motorized platform that can lift a wheelchair. The footprint, that is the area that it occupies, is very minimum. It occupies only 4 feet by 4 feet. So all you need is only 4 feet by 4 feet to put a wheelchair lift. So this can take a person from one level to another level, to a higher level, without occupying much space. And the one at the bottom is very useful for people who can stand, who can walk, but very minimum. They can't walk much. It could be myopathy, or it could be anything where they go breathless. So we're talking about a small ramp on which a person can just go and stand. It can measure just 1 foot by 1 foot. The person can go and stand on that and press a button. It can lift the person up to say 1 feet or 1 foot or 2 feet or whatever, minimum height. So even if they don't use a wheelchair, but if they need assistance to go up a height of say 1 foot or 2 feet, they can use the one at the bottom. That's the small a patient lift as they are standing. Next, please. These are becoming quite popular these days. The one on the left is called a stair lift or a staircase lift. In fact, there are a lot of hospitals, clinics which are located in the basement. The person who's going to come to the hospital or the clinic is already very sick, and they will not be able to walk down a flight of steps or walk up a flight of steps. So we have the staircase lifts, or the stair lifts as they're called. It's a rail that is permanently mounted on one side, one corner of the staircase, and then there is a chair. So when they press the up button, the chair glides on top of the rail and stops at the higher level. So the person with weak knees, or people with arthritis, or people who simply go breathless, if they climb even a few steps, they can use. In fact, I have several customers who have children affected by cerebral palsy, and the bedroom is in the first floor. So they make the child sit on the chair, and the parent takes the child upstairs. When I say child, even if the child is 30 years old, the child is still a child, and we are talking about parents who age. So the child might weigh even 30, 40 kgs or 45 kgs, making it very, very difficult for the parents to take the child up a flight of steps. So we have the staircase lift on the left. On the right, we have a platform that does the same job, but it takes a patient seated on a wheelchair over a flight of steps. Instead of the person sitting on the chair, we are talking about a patient sitting on his or her own wheelchair, and the wheelchair goes on top of the platform, and then you press the up button. The patient, along with the wheelchair, goes up the flight of steps. We have given it to several diagnostic labs and physiotherapy centers which are located in the basement. This does the same job. On the left, you have the wheelchair platform lift to even get into a house. The residence of a wheelchair user might have 3-4 steps, and they might not have the space to put a ramp. So we have the motorized wheelchair lift. If you see on the left, you can see to the right of the staircase, you have an equipment which can take the wheelchair bound person up a flight of 4 or 5 steps. And on the right, it's a hydraulic platform which can lift a wheelchair bound person up. A person seated on the wheelchair can be lifted and can be taken into a bus or a van. We have several such installations. In fact, there is one agency called Get Going who have installed this hydraulic ramp on their van, and they give it on hire to people who want it for a temporary use. So we have the hydraulic platform lift for buses and vans. What you see here on the left is a hydraulic home lift, where there is a building with just 1 floor, or say max 2 floors, and it's already an old house where they forgot to put a lift. And after many years, the owner of the house realizes that he or she is not able to go up a flight of steps, and they use a wheelchair. This is an option to have in the house. This is called a domestic home lift, a vertical hydraulic home lift. It is for a family. It is not for regular use like the milkman and the postman and all cannot use. This is a lift exclusively for the family members to go up and down a few times a day. If they want, they can do it while seated on their own wheelchair. So this is a home lift, and it doesn't require any major construction. No major civil work is required. You don't have to build a separate shaft for installing this lift. There is no machine room, no pit, and in about 45 days we can lift installed. So what you saw earlier, on the left you see a wheelchair user getting into the Metropolitan Transport Corporation bus using the hydraulic platform lift. On the right you see somebody getting into a van. On the left bottom you see the staircase lift, and on the right bottom you see the ramp that we made for Indian Railways. It's a wheeled ramp. You can wheel it, you can keep it at one corner in the platform, and whenever you realize that a patient is arriving in a train using a wheelchair, at that time you can roll this ramp to the train within 10-15 seconds, and you can open it and you can facilitate the disembarkation of the wheelchair, the passenger using a wheelchair. So useful takeaways from accessible or accessibility equipment. Same. There are 1 foot raise. There could be some platforms which are 3 feet, 4 feet. Now this stage is about, I think, 2.5 to 3 feet tall. So there are different places where you need different length and different height of these lifts and ramps. So we can customize all that. And of course, if we restrict ourselves only to patients, movement of patient, then it might not make sense to sell more of these products. So we also have these ramps and these equipment which can move material. For example, we have given one of these lifts to a hospital in Hyderabad where they have a portable X-ray machine. So the portable X-ray machine is loaded into the van using that hydraulic wheelchair lift. They don't lift a wheelchair, but they lift the X-ray machine to transport it from one place to another. So I was also talking about some equipment which can be used for recuperation after a surgery or a patient to recover more comfortably, or during that phase of recovery or recuperation. These equipment might be quite useful. The first one on the left, a wheelchair that can double up as a bed. There are several uses for this. One of the main uses, you don't have to transfer. One of the major problems with people with disabilities or restricted mobility or even patient is actually transferring them, is to move them even from the operation theater, even the OT table, from the operation table to a stretcher, to move a very heavy patient sometimes from the operation table to the ward itself is a big challenge. So we have some equipment which can actually lift the patient and can transfer. Transfers are a very risky operation as well. When you move somebody bodily, lifting them, when you lift them bodily and when you move them, chances of getting hurt is very high. You must be extremely careful when you move them. So a bed wheelchair, which you see left top, is something where you don't have to transfer the patient very often. If the patient wants to sleep, they can do it on the wheelchair itself. All you need to do is recline the backrest and lift the footrest. The wheelchair becomes like a bed, and you don't have to transfer them. On the right top, we have a wheelchair with a function called tilt in space. The backrest and the seat move like this into a wedge shape, into a V shape at the same time. Many of us would have, when you sit on a dining table, we sometimes, unintentionally, we tend to rock like this. What happens is, it actually gives you comfort. The reason is, the upper body weight falls fully on your gluteal region, and there is buildup of pressure and heat in your gluteal region. So when you tilt yourself like this, the upper body weight gets distributed between your back and your gluteal region. So there is less accumulation of heat and pressure in your gluteal region. It actually gives you a lot of comfort. So we have the tilt in space wheelchair, which helps patients who are seated on a wheelchair for long durations. And at the bottom, it's something very similar to the tilt in space. Another situation where the blood flow to the brain sometimes gets reduced, ischemia, the doctor suggests to the patient to lie down in such a way that the brain or the head is lower than the heart level, so that the pumping of blood is easier to the brain. So these bed wheelchairs, we can design it in such a way that the backrest goes more than 180 degrees. So the head level will be lower than the heart level. In fact, we know a lot of patients who have told us that they feel giddy. They know when the oxygen supply to the their brain reduces, they're able to feel it. They go a little bit, they feel like fainting, and immediately, within a minute, they can tilt backwards, putting their head level lower than their heart level, and they recover faster. You have orthopedic wheelchairs for people who undergo knee surgery or a hip bone surgery. If the doctor advises that you have to keep your leg stretched, then you can have the orthopedic wheelchair, which is there on the left. And then right in the middle, we have the stand-up chair. Stand-up chair has several advantages. Besides giving relief from pressure and heat accumulation leading to sores, it ensures that the sores do not happen. It also helps in bowel movement and also blood flow. And when the blood flow is better, the swelling of your ankle, all that also reduces. And yeah. So that's the stand-up chair, which is very useful for people who are convalescing or getting better after a surgery, or people who spend a lot of time on the wheelchair. This is a wheelchair which is attendant driven. You can see the joystick control at the back. So if there is a ramp and if the user cannot use the wheelchair by themselves, then you have the attendant driven wheelchair. So even a very small nurse or even a small child can actually push a heavy patient up a ramp by using the joystick. Next, please. So this was the transfer device I was talking about. Transferring patients from the bed to the chair or bed to the wheelchair and back. This can be done by the aged parent of a child, or it can be done by anybody, even a nurse or an attendant can move a heavy patient from wheelchair to bed and back. We have swimming pool, hydrotherapy pool lifts, and then we have gait trainers. Those after a spinal injury or a head injury might have to learn how to walk right from scratch. For them, we have the gait trainers. They're also called as unweighing systems, where the own body weight of the patient is unweighed. You lift the person off the floor, and then slowly you start bringing them down so that the toe touches the floor, and slowly their own body weight over a period of time will ensure that the legs get stronger over a period of time. So gait trainer unweighing system. So any movement of any person who has a problem with a daily activity, it could be right from the time of getting from the bed and in the night when they go back to bed. During the course of the day, if they have any problem in doing any activity, you can be sure that there is technology which can assist them in making that activity easy for them. So please keep in mind, technology is available for patients. Wherever restricted mobility affects the patient, technology is available to make their life better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.